So I met the guy that invented Ronald McDonald.
No way. So
Yeah.
what was wrong with him? Because, you know.
Well, he was pretty much a rock star, though, because he invented a quarter pounder and the Big Mac. He invented all that. So he was Ray Kroc's first marketing guy. And he came to one of my Vistage groups, and he was 90 at the time.
Wow.
And I said, "What are you doing in town?" And he said, the chairman of Coca-Cola is going to pay me $100,000 to have lunch with him, and then I'm having dinner tonight with the chairman of Georgia Pacific. He's paying me $100,000 because they want to pick my brain.
Must be nice. I aspire to that. Well, what I heard about the Big Mac, at least the naming of the Big Mac, now this is from Food That Built America on the History Channel.
Mm-hmm.
They said they couldn't decide on the name for it, and they were doing it in response to Burger King, the Whopper, right? And Ray Kroc's like, I need a signature burger. Why don't I have a signature burger? What's wrong? You know, Burger King is kicking their ass. So he's like, we gotta have a signature burger. So they came up with the Whopper or the Big Mac, but they didn't have a name for it. And so they had like all these different names, and none of them worked. And then they were in this big PR marketing meeting, and the secretary said, why not Big Mac? And there's actually like a plaque that honors her. It was like Iris Glitch or something.
For the Big Mac.
But at the like 50th anniversary of the Big Mac or whatever it was, they presented her with like a plaque and a certificate. That's what she got. She didn't get any compensation. Yeah. Yeah, she's not getting $100,000 for lunch with the CEO. But she did get mentioned in the History Channel episode. But because I Googled her afterwards, and they're like, yeah, they gave her like a little scroll thing with a seal on it.
Hey everybody, Steve Beecham here with another episode of Beach Talks, and I've got my friend Stephanie Stuckey. She's agreed to come and spend a little bit of time with us, and we want to explore about the whole history of Stuckey's, and she's taking it over now, and where she's going, and maybe some business lessons that we've learned, and a little bit of her history, and also I'm excited to have her here, and I hope y'all enjoy this podcast. So, Stephanie, tell me basically how your grandfather, right?
Yes, my grandfather.
So how did he become the pecan, or is it pecan? How do we say it?
Okay, so you're starting with a very controversial topic here, right?
Oh.
I know, you're no stranger to controversy. Just dive right in with a tough question. So I get asked that a lot. I will tell you the answer my grandfather gave.
That's the one we want.
Yes. He said they are pecans when you pick them, pecans when you sell them.
I love it.
Because we're from South Georgia, and we say pecans, and I have heard every joke about pecans is something you keep under your bed to...
So we're going to go pick the pecans,
yes,
but we're going to sell these folks some pecans.
Yes, because pecan sounds very highfalutin.
And
yes.
And we want more money for them.
We want more money. So I guess that's the other answer I've heard that I like is it depends on the price. Yeah.
I love it. So how did he get in that business? What was the deal? Did he have pecans or?
No, it was a bumper crop year.
Okay.
So pecans, which by the way, our state, Georgia, is the #1 state for pecan production and has been since the 1950s.
Wow.
So this was during the Great Depression, and he was looking for work. He was looking for a side hustle. He was farming. He hated to farm. He had to drop out of law school at the University of Georgia because of the Depression, and they couldn't afford to keep him there. So he was farming, and he wanted more income, and there were no jobs. But one thing was plentiful, because it was a bumper crop year, pecans. So he went around the countryside buying pecans from local farmers
area?
All over
Which is
middle
where?
Georgia, Dodge County, Georgia, right
Okay.
in the middle of the state.
Okay.
So he drove around, he bought up pecans, he went to a local sheller, he got the pecans shelled, and then he had a little stand on the side of the road. And people would pull over and stop. And one day he had this great idea that if he made candy with the pecans, he could probably get more people to stop. So he ran the mile from the little roadside stand to his home, interrupted my grandmother's bridge game, and said, Ethel, let's make candy, which was a great idea, but one problem, she didn't know how to make candy. So she looked around the bridge club and she said, do you ladies know how to make candy? And they did, so they all went in the kitchen and they started making pralines, divinity, fudge, and then they came up with the pecan log roll.
So they invented it.
They
basically.
invented that.
In
I've heard
your
people say,
grandmother's
we've
kitchen.
had the pecan log roll forever. I'm like, no, that was my grandma and the Bridge Club ladies. And the cool thing is those Bridge Club ladies became the candy club. So for the first several years of Stuckey's, they made all the candy for that little roadside
Those
stand.
ladies.
And from that roadside stand off of US 1 in 1935,
What town?
Eastman, Georgia,
Eastman.
he grew it into what was the first roadside retail chain. At our peak, we had 368 stores in 40 states. So before there was TA or Love's or Wawa or Buc-ee's, there was Stuckey's. We predated all of them. The very first store he had was 1937. So we date our founding to 1937. So that predates all of those other roadside retail chains.
And the first store was where?
Eastman, Georgia, and then Kingsland, Georgia. And then we had one in Unadilla. And then World War II hit. He had to shut down his stores. And that's when he got into manufacturing because he started making candy for the troops. Because sugar was rationed, so the only way he could get sugar was to be part of the war effort. And then he also wanted to support the war effort. But then when the war ended, they all came back, the GIs came back, and went to school on the GI Bill, started raising families, making money,
and traveling.
and going on vacation. And back then, nobody flew. You went on vacation, you threw the family in the back of the Woody station wagon, and you got in your car and you thought nothing of driving 4 days. And so Stuckey's was back in business on the roads. And then in 1956, the interstate came along, so my grandfather had to move his stores off of Route 66 and the Lincoln Highway, the Jefferson Highway, the Dixie Highway, onto the new interstate, which he did. And he grew from there. And then he sold the company in 1964, made a lot of money, and that was good. But then, unfortunately, we had decades of outside corporate owners who crashed the brand. He sold it.
Not your dad.
He sold it.
Okay.
Yeah, and so he made a lot of money, but the company went downhill under outside ownership.
So where does your dad play into that? Did he have anything to do with it?
Yes, my dad did. He played a cool role. So my father had his own career. He was in Congress for 10 years from Georgia. And then he started Interstate Dairy Queen Corporation. So he had the franchise rights to Dairy Queen stores all over the United States on the interstate highway system. So he took that knowledge that he had from my grandfather and put it into interstate Dairy Queen stores. And he built that from nothing. Very wealthy, very prosperous business. And in 1985, the company that had owned Stuckey's at that point, there were a couple of owners, they approached my dad because Stuckey's was not doing well. And they said, will you take it off our hands, basically? And my dad really didn't want to take on Stuckey's. It was losing money at that point. But he paired it with his Dairy Queens. So that's how he kept Stuckey's alive. And you'll still see today, there's some Stuckey's next to Dairy Queens. So fast forward some 30 years, he sells his Dairy Queen business to Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett, but Warren Buffett didn't want to buy Stuckey's.
But he wanted the Dairy Queen.
He wanted the Dairy Queen because he owned American Dairy Queen. So it kind of all fit nicely within his portfolio. And Stuckey's was just left. My dad and all his business partners made a lot of money off of that, and they retired because they were, at that point, in their 60s and 70s. And Stuckey's, over the following decade, just started to decline again. Just had a couple of people running it.
Your dad bought Stuckey's
Yes.
back, and then he sold the Dairy Queen. Who owned the Stuckey's that were still
So
there?
my dad and his former business partners. So there were about 6 owners.
And they just kind of let it
They
taper
kind
off
of-
because they'd already made their money selling the Dairy Queen. And
Yes, they left it on autopilot, basically. They had a couple people managing it. Good people, they're still on staff, but just not a lot of resources, not a lot of attention. And at that point, they were all getting, they're in their 70s. They retired.
Yeah,
They're
they were
enjoying
done.
life.
They were
yeah.
done.
So that's when, fast forward 2019, I get a phone call one day. I'm minding my own business as an environmental attorney, and they asked me if I wanted to buy Stuckey's.
Who's they?
My dad's business partners. One of his former business partners called me and said, do you want to buy Stuckey's?
And you said,
I was totally flattered. I just thought, oh my gosh, they called me.
now why did they pick you?
They
Do you have
call-
other brothers and sisters?
Right, no,
or
they
cousins?
didn't. So that was the thing. I was really flattered. I thought, well, they all call me the eco-wacko. They think I'm this tree-hugging environmental lawyer who doesn't know anything about business. I was shocked that they called me. Well, it turned out they called all the other grandchildren. There's 7 of us. They called
Okay.
the others first.
You're
So
the last one?
I mean, there were even grandchildren younger than me. Because I called my siblings and my cousins and said, who's in this with me? And they're like, oh, we already passed. So I was not the first choice. But let me tell you, I think it is a superpower to not be the first choice.
And
Because-
why?
Well, you have a chip on your shoulder. It's like, I am going to prove.
It's like somebody told you were ugly, and so
Yeah,
you're going to try to dress
right.
up as much as you can.
Like gum. Maybe I'm the last one picked for the team, but I'm going to be the best player. So that just emboldened me. I'm like, yeah, heck yeah, I'm going to do this. So, I bought it because it was for sale, and I had the money for it, because no bank is going to loan money for a
So
company.
you had to have your own money.
Yeah, it was
They
6
didn't
figures.
finance it for you or anything?
It was 6 figures in debt. It was 6 figures in the red when I bought the company. So there aren't investors lining up to give
All right,
me
so
money
you
for
have
this.
you have investors, right? I think one of them's your
I have
cousin.
2 business partners.
Two-
Yeah,
two bus-
one of them is a very distant cousin, but we like to say we're
We like to say
cousins. Yeah,
cousin.
because we want it to.
So how did
Family.
that cousin get involved? Did you call him and say, hey,
We had mutual friends and business associates, and his family had managed my family's pecan orchard for a decade. He's in the pecan business. And I was looking to get more into pecan manufacturing. Because when I bought
So
the
he had
company,
knowledge.
yeah, we didn't own any of the stores. There's only 13 original stores left. They're all licensed. We don't make a lot of money off of them. Clearly, we were 6 figures in the red. That business model was not working. So I had to figure out another business model. And I thought, well, we've been selling pecan log rolls since the 1930s. Let's quit outsourcing and paying other people to make this for us. Let's make it ourselves, improve the quality, improve our margins. And this is our
That's your
past
bread
and
and
our
butter.
future. But also, we are now making healthy snacks. So we do pecan snacks, we do some.
now did you buy this company
So
or was
we
this
bought,
already there?
yeah, we bought an existing manufacturing facility that was for sale
That's the one in Rennes?
in Rennes, Georgia, and so the man who is now one of my 2 business partners, R.G. Lamar, he was in the process of working on buying that plant already, and he said, I could use a partner. And so initially it was just, okay, let's pool our money. But then we thought, well, if we're putting our money together and we're buying this together, why aren't we joining our companies? Because he had a snack nut company too. So we merged our 2 companies, and then we bought this other company. So there were a couple of mergers there, and it was exciting. And then a year later, we got another business partner who's a marketing guy, Ted Wright, who's written a book called Fizz Marketing, and I was a big fangirl of his book.
He's
and
brilliant,
I
by
called
the way. If
him.
you haven't gotten this book, you
Word
gotta
of mouth
get-
marketing, yep. And so I just called him and said, I love what you do. Can I have lunch with you? And that lunch turned into me asking him to be on the board, which turned into us asking if he wanted to buy in. And so he is now an equity investor. So it's the 3 Musketeers.
All right,
Yeah,
so
there's 3 of us.
let's go
Yeah.
back to the merging of companies. What's the business lesson from that? Anything on that? Because people talk about
Yeah.
merging companies. So what did you learn? I mean, is there anything you learned by that? 'Cause
I think the biggest lesson, well, first of all, there's a lot that you can learn, just like the logistics about valuation and how you put together an agreement to, operate the company. So all of that you can learn pretty easily. The best book, I read the Harvard Business Review book on mergers and acquisitions like 3 times and
Really?
highlighted it. So there's a lot of resources out there on the nuts and bolts.
Okay.
But what I would add that is not in that book, and they don't talk about as much, is the merger of the cultures. So that's something I would do differently. I think my business partner and I, we aligned pretty easily because both of those two companies were pretty small. So it was easy for us to just have a bunch of conversations one-on-one and know that we were aligned with where we wanted to take the company. But the manufacturing facility had almost 100 employees. So that is a different scenario.
And they were in two separate locations, and you brought them together?
Yes, we're still merging them.
Oh, wow.
So it's the culture piece, making sure that the company you're merging into, you understand what their history is. They've been around since 1935. We've been around since 1937. So sharing those histories and making sure that they know what your brand stands for. You know what their brand stands for. So there's a lot of listening and conversations that have to happen about that I would do differently and probably start sooner.
But how would you do that if you've got these employees at these different places? I mean, do you call a meeting and get them all together?
Yeah.
So, hey, the two of us are getting married and y'all are the children and come along with the party? Or?
We've started having more hands-on meetings. We've done team building things, everything from everyone gets a Stuckey's t-shirt and a hoodie to we've been hosting meals and parties so we can just get to know one another. One thing I like to do is work a shift. So I'll get on the candy line and actually get my hairnet on, get my gloves.
That's awesome.
And actually make product. So all of that was really interesting and it's a process. It does not happen overnight. The other thing, which I didn't think about, was operating systems, accounting systems. Are you accrual? Are you cash basis? What accounting software do you use? What's your ERP?
That's all.
All of that has taken 2 years.
What ERP?
So I don't ask me what that acronym stands for, but I know it's when you merge all the software of your companies, like the operating software. And so we have migrated everything to Microsoft Business. And so we spent a lot of time researching what should be our integrated software program for our accounting. All of that, just how you book things, right? Like, it's taken 2 years. How you integrate the financials in a way that makes sense, because different people book different items in different categories. How do you depreciate equipment? All of that.
All right, so this company now...
That's been like... I just thought, all right, we're one big happy company. Let's go. It's like, oh no, it's taken a while.
So how... The company today as it exists, the plant is where and how many employees are there?
So we're in Georgia and we have a little over 100 employees.
So everybody's under the same roof now, so to speak?
They will be in a month. We're moving our warehouse, so that's taking longer.
So you and I talked before and you were trying to figure out what you were going to do to grow, and has that happened? Do you know what you're doing?
We are expanding our facility in Rennes.
So Rennes is going to stay the home of the...
That's going to stay. I do see in our future a second manufacturing facility or a separate distribution center as we grow, probably in the Midwest, that would enable us to get to the
out there quicker?
West Coast. Yes.
Do they know pecans out west? I mean, people are familiar with them?
Well, pecans are grown as far west as New Mexico.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Arizona, New Mexico grow pecans. New Mexico is a huge state for pecans, as is West Texas. Oklahoma grows pecans. Yeah, so it's a nut that, and more people, especially in the West, in California, they're adopting nut-based diets. So it's a great product.
So are pecans good for you?
They're the healthiest nut.
The healthiest nut.
They really are, and we have a lot of catching up to do, because if you go on the snack aisle, what do you see? You see almonds, you see cashews, peanuts, which isn't even a nut, it's a legume.
So we don't need peanuts.
Well, but we're from Georgia, so we like peanuts,
well, that's
right? True. We like our peanut farmers.
That's true.
We got to support our fellow agribusiness from Georgia entrepreneurs. So yes, I like peanuts, but just saying, it's a legume. You see pistachio, right?
Yeah.
But you will be hard pressed to find a bag of pecans. They're usually fighting for space in a mixed nut bag.
Right.
Yeah. So the reason for that is that most of these other nuts have very organized co-ops. So like Blue Diamond and Emerald, those are food co-ops. So all those farmers are concentrated in one area. They're in California.
Okay.
And they're all in these co-ops, so they work together. They're very
And we don't have
organized.
that?
No, pecan farmers are in 20 states. They're fiercely independent. They're scrappy. They're fighting with the shellers. There's just been decades of them not being really unified. But lately, they've gotten unified. They've gotten a federal marketing order. So all these other nuts have federal marketing orders. And so,
What does that mean?
So many products that we enjoy
Uh-huh.
have a federal marketing order. So that means that you agree, as an industry, to impose a fee per ton of your product. And that goes to the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they take that money and they use it for research to show that your product is healthy. They use it for marketing to help sell your product.
So like the orange guys and the grapefruit guys and the banana guy, well, maybe not bananas, but
yeah, because they're not
guys.
grown here. I'll give you a great example. Got Milk.
Yeah.
That's a USDA marketing funded campaign.
Because they've all gotten together.
Got Milk. Yeah. Pork, the other white meat, that's a USDA funded program.
That's pretty
Yeah.
clever.
Yeah. So the pecan growers have just been a little slow and getting to the
Are you working
USDA
on that
part.
though? Or are you
My
trying
business partner is. That's why I have a business partner who is a pecan farmer. He is on the Georgia board for the Pecan Commission. So he's in with all these folks and they're making progress. We now have our federal marketing order. We've now got a marketing campaign going. We're getting research done. That takes a minute. But we're starting to roll out, and I think America is starting to discover that the pecan is not just for pie. It doesn't just belong on the produce aisle. It belongs on the snack aisle. And I think it belongs on the wine aisle because it tastes really good with wine. It pairs
Why
well
aren't we
with
eating
wine.
some with our
Right?
wine?
So
Which one would we pair with our wine?
I like the maple, personally.
How is that with bourbon? I've got my bourbon.
I think it'd be good with bourbon. That's why I picked it. So this is how we make it. I'm not going to give all of our process away because we have a proprietary process that makes our nuts taste better. It really seals in the flavor and the crunch. But we roast these and then, that's good, and then we toss them in maple syrup.
These things are huge.
Yeah. These
Oh
are
my
all
God.
Georgia-grown pecans.
Oh my God. All right, so this
These are called
Stuckey's
desirables.
desirable.
Isn't that a great name for the pecan variety? It's called a desirable.
A desirable.
Mhm.
All right, does Stuckey's own their own pecan orchard?
We do not. We purchase from other
Even though your
farmers.
partner, I thought maybe when
Yes.
y'all got together that you got his business.
I didn't buy his pecan grove.
Okay.
We merged our snack nut businesses.
Does his pecans end up in the Stuckey's
Yes.
mix?
All of them. Yeah. He sells to us, and then
Ooh.
my family has a pecan orchard, but it's not owned by the company.
Okay.
And so those
And that fell in?
pecans go. So there are some pecans, you may be eating a pecan.
So we
that
could say a
came-
Stuckey owns some pecans.
So some of the nuts that go in our candies and our snacks are from the Stuckey pecan orchard.
Okay.
But it is not like this vast orchard. It's 100 acres. It's small.
That's small.
That's small. Yeah.
Okay.
It's really good. It crunches.
So real quick, if you and I wanted to start a pecan orchard, how long does it take to get a tree that's producing pecans?
That's the problem. It's very capital intensive. It's 5 to 7 years.
Oh man.
So that's why
That's kind of like bourbon and wine. You gotta let it sit for a while.
the cool thing is this type of industry that has a long ramp-up phase encourages family-owned businesses.
Okay.
Because it's decades to really get the business going sometimes. It's intergenerational. And a pecan grove can be merchantable for 200 plus years.
So that tree's good for
That
200.
tree's good.
That's
So
incredible.
you could have great-great-grandparents plant your orchard, right? So
Like
that's
your
pretty cool.
family, right?
Yeah.
Goes all the way back at least to your grandfather.
To my grandfather.
Okay, I want to talk about politics for a minute.
Okay.
So you said your dad was in politics up in D.C.
He was.
So that means that you lived in D.C. or did he come home every weekend or what?
Yes, every summer.
Every summer. So you grew up. How old were you in D.C. and what was he in the house or the Senate?
The house. I was a year old
when he first got elected.
Yeah, my entire childhood was Washington D.C.
Till about what time?
I went off to college.
Oh my gosh, so the
Yeah.
whole time. Okay.
And then I went to University of Georgia, and I have not left the state since. So,
All right, then
I'm home.
Then you decided to run for politics, right?
That's right.
So tell me about that.
I was in the Georgia House for 14 years.
From what district or?
It's the Decatur area and Emory University area of this now city of Atlanta. And I was very passionate about the environment. So that was sort of my
Your thing.
driving motivation for running for office.
Were you a Democrat or Republican or what?
I ran as a Democrat, got elected as a Democrat. Yeah.
So with your dad, was he a Democrat?
He was, but he was what I call a Zell
Yellow
Miller.
dog?
But he was a Zell Miller Democrat. This was in the 60s and 70s.
So I want to show you a picture.
Yeah, so today he would be a Republican. He votes, he's independent.
This is
now.
1968.
I love it.
My grandfather's in this picture. He was a state
love
senator.
it.
Those are all the Republicans in the state that were elected to office. That's all there were for the
And
Republicans.
now that's probably like the Democrats, about
Exactly.
the same number. Yeah. So was that woman a senator? Or was she,
I think she was
was she the
actually
secretary?
like secretary. Yeah, this is
Secretary.
68. I'm sure she was. I don't.
Yeah. My grandfather was in the state house.
He
It
was?
was like 60.
So you got politics
60
in your
to
blood.
64. Yeah, it was pretty cool. When I first ran, there were about 6 legislators who had served with my grandfather, including Speaker Murphy. Yeah, so that was a cool history. He was always nice to me.
So did
because-
you enjoy
yeah.
your time there?
I did. I really did.
What did you learn? What can you tell us about politics from the inside that maybe somebody like me doesn't know?
I think the most important thing is really don't burn bridges. And I tried so hard not to be too partisan, and it's so hard in politics, and this is one of the main reasons I didn't run for re-election, is that the way the districts are drawn, they are very Democratic or very Republican.
On purpose.
On purpose, which is so counter to democracy,
Right.
because you end up with elected officials who have to survive the primary. And the primary drives you to the far right or the far left. And the reality is most voters are in the middle. But it's really hard to get elected if you're in the middle. And I really consider myself more of a centrist, but it is hard to be a centrist in politics at any level. So that's a main reason I got out of it, is I was tired of the incredible divisiveness. And there started to be just a lot of issues that I just thought were mean issues and people fighting, and it cost a lot to run. My last election cost me $120,000, and
For a state house seat.
state house seat, and my last election was 2000. I got out in 2012, so my last election was 2010. So over a decade ago, it was 120,000.
That's too
So
much.
it's more now. Now this is Metro Atlanta, but still, that's a lot of money. And the job at that time, they pay a little bit better, but not much. The job at that time paid $16,000 a year before taxes. And I had to raise $120,000. So I just got tired of it. I kept getting redistricted.
Yeah.
And every other year, I would have a new district.
New people to meet.
They were constantly redistricting me. There had been a Supreme Court opinion that said you could pretty much redistrict at any time. So I was being tweaked.
They were trying
lot.
to push you out anyway,
Yeah.
I guess, as Republicans started taking more control, right?
Republicans were taking more control.
Yeah.
So,
Man.
but having said that, I have great friends on the other side of the aisle. So now I like being in Stuckey world because I'm not operating as a Democrat or a Republican. I'm just selling candy and celebrating the road trip. And hopefully that's something that brings people together as opposed to dividing them.
All right, so let's talk about the environmental
Yeah.
piece of your world. So how did you get involved in that, and what did you do? And
Well, I think it really traces back to my father. When he was in Congress, he passed the legislation to protect Cumberland Island.
oh,
That was in 1972, so they just had their 50th anniversary. And he also passed the legislation designating the Okefenokee
swamp.
as a wildlife refuge. So he passed Cumberland as the national seashore, Okefenokee as a wildlife refuge. And so I remember as a child visiting the Okefenokee, visiting Cumberland with him, being on the land, seeing how special these places are. And so that got me just passionate about it.
Right.
And so when I ran for office, I learned that my district had more Sierra Club members than any other House district in the state.
Wow.
So I thought, well, I already love the environment and I wanted to get involved in public service. And so this is my thing. And I got myself on the Natural Resources Committee and just, it grew from there. You know, I got involved with water issues and land use and recycling.
And you started doing that
waste
legally,
management.
right?
Yes, and so then I left the legislature to run an environmental law firm called Green Law. And we were a nonprofit. It's unfortunately no longer around, but we said giving Georgia's environment its day in court. So we represented river keepers, the Sierra Club. We did a lot of clean air, clean water litigation, represented citizens groups on things like landfills coming in their communities, especially low-income minority communities. So we did some environmental justice work. I loved it. It was fun.
So
yeah, it was fun.
What's your take then on what's going on with the environment? You know, some people think
Yeah.
it's gonna be terrible, and some people say it's a bunch of hogwash. What do you think?
I just think all you have to do is see the severe weather that we're experiencing and know that something's not right with our environment. Just look outside
Yeah.
and see what's happening. Any farmer knows that. And I don't think farmers are super political. They just want to protect their crops. But look how Hurricane Michael devastated Georgia's pecan crop.
It did.
I mean, 90% of the crop was impacted one way or the other that year. Some crops were completely decimated. So we are seeing this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the patterns are there. So everyone, I guess, has to draw their own conclusions. But
So what's
I think
the
it's
answer?
pretty obvious. I think every single person has an obligation to live their life in a way that
More
limits the
environmentally
amount of
friendly.
resources, right? And just use less stuff. Don't use as much. Don't, if you can, drive an electric vehicle, do your part. But I also I used to think government was the answer, right? And I left my law practice actually to be head of sustainability for the city of Atlanta. And I still think government is a part of the solution, but I think business has just as important a role to play. And it's simple things too. It doesn't have to be things that hurt your bottom line. So that's one thing I really want to stress is that sustainability is about economic sustainability as well as environmental sustainability. So if you can't make the numbers work for solar, then maybe you're not quite ready yet to put solar on your facility, right? Like we're working on trying to figure out if we can
Do that.
front the cost for solar. I'd love to. We're not quite there yet. So I want solar, but I'm not going to lose money on that because I've got to pay my employees. That's about sustainability
you got to make some income first.
I've got to keep my employee base onboarded. So that's important to me, not to have to lay off people. I would really like to.
Especially in
lay
Rennes,
off
Georgia,
people.
right? That's a big deal, right?
No, it's all about being part of the community. I think the most important thing we do for the environment is that we source our pecans locally from Georgia farmers. So we're not shipping product from all over the country. We get our packaging material from a company, Pratt, in Albany, Georgia. We get our film packaging from a firm out of North Carolina. We get our spices from I think it's North or South Carolina, but it's one of the Carolinas. So we source domestically, we source close to our factory, and I think that supply chain is something that too often people don't think about as being really critical to the environment.
Yeah.
But if you're not having to ship
You're not
product
bringing stuff from China, right?
we're really not. I mean, I think some of the T-shirts that we sell in the stores originate from India or China, or Taiwan.
But pretty much what you're
But,
doing there
yeah.
is all local, southeastern.
You know, it's really, really hard to get domestic textiles. That's the one challenge I've had, and I think clothing
God,
companies.
that used to be the big thing we did down here.
We used to be,
too.
in Georgia too, but they're all closed. All those textile mills that we had in
All of them.
LaGrange and Forsyth, they're closed. They're shuttered. They're not in operation. And I have priced out trying to get textile mills in the U.S., and it's double cost. So folks pulling over on the interstate, getting a souvenir T-shirt, they are not going to buy a $35 T-shirt. They're going to
It's too
buy a
much.
$12.99, a $14.99. Like our T-shirts sell for like $12.99
That's pretty cheap.
on the interstate. But that's their interstate prices. We're not Neiman Marcus. So what I've done is we have the imprints done. The screen printing is all done domestically. But I've asked them, where do you get your shirts from? Where are your blanks from? And
It is what it is.
they're not from this country.
Yeah, not yet. I think we'll get back to that.
I would love that. I would love to see that happen.
All right, tell me about the
Yeah.
road trip. I mean, you've made that so much of your thing. So, is that something you're doing because you love it, or is it something you're doing because you're trying to promote it for the product? I mean, tell me, what's got you going on road trips?
Yes, all of that. So, interesting story. When I bought the company a few months later, we were trying to figure out, well, what's the marketing strategy? And when people ask me, well, why are you your own brand ambassador? Why are you out there promoting Stuckies? And
Why wouldn't you?
well, the easy answer is I can afford myself. We don't have a lot of money. We don't have a big budget. Any money we make, we've given 3 across-the-board pay raises, especially to the frontline workers. So that's where our money's going. It's investing in our people, and I can do the marketing. And I don't need to pay some social media influencer to tweet for me. So I'm doing this myself, but I had to have a strategy. So I got our team in a room, and we basically said, we're not leaving here until we figure out what is our brand about. What is our brand essence?
That's cool.
And there was this huge debate. It was like 12 Angry Men, if you've seen that movie, although there's some women in there. Like, we were literally back and forth. Is it the pecan or is it the road trip? Because we started out on the interstate, on the road. So we're this road trip brand. So is it the road trip or is it the pecan? Back and forth, back and forth. And the road trip won out. And here's why. It's storytelling.
Yeah.
You get that, right? So I thought, what can I tell stories about? I can tell stories about the road trip.
Right.
And what connects more people? It's the road trip. Now, that doesn't mean I can't do a post occasionally that tells a story about pecans, and there's some interesting things I can say. But if you're posting 365 days a year, which I try to do, original content, that's a lot to say about a nut. As much as I love the nut, but the road trip, that's infinite. There's so many fun things you can say about the road trip. You can talk about dive bars. You can talk about quirky roadside attractions. You can talk about folk artists who have roadside displays. You can talk about your favorite museums. You can talk about cars, the whole car culture. You can talk about chains. You can talk about chain restaurants. You can talk about motels, billboards, or just that sense of fun and exploration and freedom that only a road trip can bring.
How do you decide what road trip you go on? How do you?
I'm very practical. My road trips are based on work. So when people see me posting on social media, like last week I was in Fort Lauderdale, well, I was there being paid to give a speech. That's why I was there. So while I'm there, I snap some photos and I post about the road trip.
So do you research that? I mean,
Yes.
how do you
Yes.
figure that out? So
I
let's
research.
take Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Because this is a good marketing thing. Because really what you're saying is that marketing is about having something to market, right? You got to have assets, you got to have ideas, you got to have content.
You have to have content.
So
you have to have
creating,
stories.
You're creating content.
Yeah.
So how did you go about, because this will help a lot of people. So I'm going to Fort Lauderdale. What's the process to come up with that content to go, hey, after the speech, before the
Yeah.
speech, I'm going to do this?
Yes. So I research.
What
I
do
look
you
in
research?
the history of the place. So I
Okay.
kind of understand the history. I'll read up.
On Fort
Usually
Lauderdale.
on the tourism sites, like
Okay.
Fort Lauderdale Tourism Office. They'll have lots of information about the history of the place. So I look for credible sources. And then I have road tripping websites that I go to. Roadside America is one.
Okay.
Atlas Obscura is one that I absolutely love. There's one I just discovered. I can't remember. I think it's called Artscape, but it's roadside art. So I
that's
look
cool.
at that one. There's one that I love called roadarch.com, and it's roadside architecture. So old motels.
Old buildings.
Yeah, old buildings. So I look at all those different sources, and I write down what's interesting to me. And then I get Google Maps. And Google Maps, by the way, is a great resource too, because
Right.
they'll pop up places to see as well. You can click on the map and see what's on there. And then I'll map it all out and figure out, well, what's where. As much as possible, I try to
Some
walk
of it's
the
on
route.
this side of town, that side of
Yeah.
town.
But I have certain things I like. I like drive-ins, I like dive bars, quirky museums like the Button Museum, the Funerary Museum, which is in Houston, Texas. It's the Museum of Funeral Operators. That one's kind of interesting. There's
I'd have
there's a
missed that one.
circus museum in Sarasota. Just sort of these funky offbeat places. I love seeing that sort of thing. So the Lunchbox Museum, that one's fun in Columbus,
So there's
Georgia.
it's like
Yeah.
there's a day that's special for everything, and there's
Yeah.
like a museum that's special for everything,
Yes.
right? Like today's Candy Day, and there's a candy museum. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
There's
so,
a candy wrapper museum, by the way. I love that. I mean, it's just meeting the people and understanding their story and their passion, like what led them to collect candy wrappers their whole life. I love that.
That's
See,
unbelievable.
it's not just a story of the museum, it's the people behind the museum and what led them
Do you
to...
go in there and talk to them and try to learn more?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes I'll reach out to them in advance and say, I'd love to meet you. And often these people are really excited to talk to anyone about their product or their museum. I've had days where I'm the only person at the museum all day, so they're super happy to see me.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's fun, but the important thing to me is, yes, I'm celebrating the road trip, I'm selling the road trip. You tell those stories, and then your product will start selling too.
So that's
It's
the
more
next thing.
subtle. You
So-
don't have to be like, buy my pecan log roll. That's kind of boring, right?
Right.
But if you tell a story about how fun the road trip is, and oh, by the way, this makes a great road trip snack. You should take one along.
That's the idea.
It's a little more fun.
All right. So
Yeah, it's
tell
practical.
tell me about, so LinkedIn seems to be your major
Yes,
strategy.
yes.
All right, so what do people need to know about what your experience has been on LinkedIn and making that work for their business? What have you learned?
I think the key thing to know is that it's not any one element. So it's not just posting on LinkedIn. It's creating a brand, building conversations, and building it in a multi-pronged way. Like I give speeches, I do podcasts, I talk to people like you, I post on LinkedIn, I post on all the other social media channels. We have an email blast, we have a website, I have a blog. So there's
all of it.
all this different dialogue and content going out there. Also video content. I'm on TikTok, not as regularly as I'd like to be, but it's a bit of a challenge for me. But I am trying to post at least once a week, a little something, something. So LinkedIn, though, is for me more what we're focused on to drive growth in our business.
Because businesses
we're
are on there?
B2B. We're B2B. Most of our business is selling our product to companies like Food Lion, Wawa, Ingalls. We're in Big Lots and 2 of their distribution centers, not nationwide, but a couple. So it's growing through those
Other
partners.
businesses.
Yeah, there's partner retailers. So LinkedIn is the space for B2B.
Right.
And I'll give you a great example. I did a post on Wawa a year ago. I'm at a Wawa, not holding a cup of coffee in the Wawa post. Or a cup of wine. I'm holding a cup of coffee, and I'm basically like, here I am at Wawa with my coffee. You know what would go really great with my coffee would be a pecan log roll. And I just posted that on LinkedIn. Well, it got the attention of the CEO of Wawa. And he reached out to me via LinkedIn and said, I'll connect you with our snack and candy buyer. So you'll see these large companies.
You weren't there before.
We were not there before. It all came from LinkedIn. Now, it took a year. I had to meet with them. We had to send them samples. We had to get established with their distribution firm, which is McLean Southeast. We had to pay the slotting fees. You know, there's a lot of work that goes into actually getting your product on a shelf. But we're in Wawa now, and I posted actually this week because I was down in Florida. We're in Wawa in Florida. One SKU. It's that maple SKU, the maple pecan. And so I did a post, this time me holding the product.
At the store.
And I said it all started with a LinkedIn post. So
Wow.
it does work, but it's a lot of work to get it to work. It
All right, so
wasn't,
how
you know,
much-
you can't have like 2 followers and post at Walmart and say, hey, I want to be on Walmart. And then suddenly the CEO of Walmart is going to be messaging
So how did you get more followers?
I post every day. I post original content. I tell stories. I talk
They just
about
started
the
coming
road
in.
trip. I talk about themes that are universal, that connect people. You engage in conversation. If somebody comments, you comment back. You share content of
Are
people
you
you
doing that
admire.
personally?
Yes. I don't have a social media person.
But you do the posts, you
I
do
do
the
'em.
pictures, you do
I
the
do 'em.
videos, everything.
I do them
How much time do you spend every day on that?
an hour a day, probably.
An hour?
Yeah, I'd say an hour, a good hour.
That's pretty good.
And I have I would say like there are, at the beginning of the year, typically we'll do strategy sessions, or Ted Wright on our board will call me and say, all right, Stephanie, that post today was a little off, let's talk. And so we'll have these strategy sessions where he helps me understand how you guide your conversations in a way
No, he's
That's-
very helpful on
that's
that.
going to, it's all about, his niche is word of mouth marketing.
How do you get other people to talk about it?
Yeah, that's the most powerful
It's the way.
endorsement. I mean, you can see all the ads you want saying, buy these kettle glazed, but if I'm at a cocktail party and I'm talking to you, and your wife serves up a Stuckey's nut, and you're like, these are the best, you gotta try them, what's gonna sell my product? It's that word of mouth from trusted people. And there's only a small portion of the population that are word of mouth influencers, right? You're one of them. But they're people who want to try new things, and it's not just want to try new things. The second part is they want to share it with others.
Well, you want to
Yeah.
share with other people stuff that you don't think they know because
Yes.
it makes you feel like you're smart.
Right. That's exactly.
Unfortunately, that's
Well,
true.
it's not just that, but yeah, you get like a kick out of it. Like you enjoy saying, "Oh my God, do you know about the iPhone?" You know, like you're probably one of the very first people who was like standing in line getting the first iPhone and telling everyone about it. And you have the cool hot new thing, and you tell everyone, and then they tell people, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, if I want to know what the cool thing is, you got to call Steve." You know, everyone has a friend like that.
Yeah.
At least one friend.
Yeah,
Those are the people I'm talking to.
that's where your focus
Yeah,
is.
those are my peeps. I need those people telling their 2,000 friends, right, on social media.
Yeah, if they got 2,000, that's actually pretty good.
Influencers on LinkedIn probably have at least 2,000.
Oh, influencers, definitely.
Yeah.
How many people do you have on your LinkedIn following you?
I am now, I checked this morning because I did a webinar about this, 113,000. And 3 years ago, I had 2,000. So all
Wow.
of that has happened in recent years, posting every single day.
And that's
Yeah.
that's
It does not
posting-
happen overnight. You don't just
No,
suddenly
but it's
get
not
it.
just
Yeah.
posting every day. It's posting good quality content every day,
Original content, original photographs.
and it's different every day.
I try to be different. There's some days where I'm like, all right, I'm going to write about a drive-in theater again. You know?
Well, all right.
Here's another dive bar I discovered. Dive bars are good because there are people out there who are just rabid about dive bars. So I know a dive bar post is going to get some interest. So, and I love a dive bar.
It's like it spikes up when you do the dive bar.
Well, yes, and you know why? Like, dive bars are things that draw community together.
Yeah.
So I try to focus on what is it that connects people with a community. And so for me, I don't know if you call it dive bar, but like I love Manuel's Tavern, I love Northside Tavern. There's certain places in Atlanta.
They're like pubs where in
Yeah.
England, right? It's a community where the
Yeah.
community gets together.
Yeah, and you get a PBR, it's always on tap. You ask for the menu, they're going to hand you a Slim Jim. You know, kind of be like, what do you mean menu? Yeah. And so I like those places because you can sit at the bar and talk to someone, you can learn about the place. And everybody loves to tell you about the fun, interesting place in their town. So I like to post, I'm going to be in San Diego. What's a fun dive bar in San Diego? And see what people come up with.
And they'll send it
always
to you.
come up with good places. Yes,
Oh,
every
man,
single
that's
time. I discovered the Top Gun bar because of that. Where Top Gun, the scene
bar?
in Top Gun,
Yeah.
you know, where they're playing the piano
Yeah.
and they're singing Great Balls of Fire.
Yeah.
That bar is in San Diego. It's a dive bar. It's actually called Kansas City Barbecue. It's a barbecue joint, but they have a bar section that is total dive bar with the dollar bills on the wall, right? And it's a military town, so there's a lot of military paraphernalia up on the walls, but it's really a great bar.
That's cool.
Yeah, and the piano is there. The piano that they played on.
That's
Yep.
so cool.
And the corner where at the very end they're playing "Take My Breath Away."
Mhm.
That's you're like, there it is. That's where they filmed it, right there. Yeah. So that stuff is fun. And then you post about that, and everyone loves Top Gun. Who doesn't love that movie? And now that
No.
Maverick's out.
It's fantastic.
So yeah, it's just this stuff that binds us, that connects us, that people can relate to.
So where does Stuckey's go from where it is now? Where are we headed? Where do we want to go?
So two things. One is I have this audacious goal for us to be the go-to pecan snack in this country. So when people think, I want to grab a pecan bag on my snack aisle, we want them
Say Stuckey's.
to get Stuckey's. Like, we're going to be what Planters is for the peanut, what the Wonderful Company is for the pistachio, what Emerald and Blue Diamond are for the almond, what Mauna Loa is for the macadamia nut. I had to think for a second. So we want to be that for the pecan.
Okay.
So continue to drive growth through production and marketing and sales of our pecan snacks and candies. And then the other is I still love the stores, even though we don't own or operate any. So I have this dream to own 5 Stuckey stores. I'm calling them Stuckey's Oasis. That's sort of in my mind, the concept I've worked on. I've actually written it out. It's not just in my mind. I have a document. I have a visioning document of what this store looks like. It's this welcoming oasis. And yes, it will have, those of you familiar with our brand, it will have the sloped roof, this kind of this color, the turquoise. So we will have elements of the classic Stuckey's, but we'll have EV charging, we'll have dog parks, and it will be a celebration of the road trip, and there will only be 5 of them. I don't need 200 stores. They're going to be destination locations that are brand forward, that are an opportunity for us to innovate, try out new product, create an experience where people will go out of their way to pull over. And most importantly, I don't want us to be competing with all the other partners we have out there. So if we have 200 stores.
So you want to be where
Yeah.
they're not.
Yeah, or
but do you
just
have
even if
enough
there's only
SKUs?
5.
Do you have enough product to fill up a store? Or
Oh, well, you can source other, I mean, right now, our T-shirts and our yeehaws and our kitschy, the snow globes and the alligator heads, like, we source those from other vendors. So we'll get
other stuff?
sort of road trip souvenirs from other vendors, absolutely. And we have a distribution company already that sources that product for the licensed locations that we have. So
Okay.
we already have a structure in place to buy that product and sell that product. So yeah, we're not going to fill up just with our product alone.
You thought about riding like a Harley? It sounds like that might
Wouldn't
be.
that be fun? I'm kind of scared. Like maybe I could be someone on the back.
Yeah.
Could hang on.
You can do that. You
Yeah.
can do that.
I think that'd be fun. Because motorcyclists love the back roads of America, right? It's kind of boring to ride on an interstate. Are you a Harley?
Oh, no, I'm not a Harley. I'm a BMW guy.
Okay, all right. But you're part of that culture.
I rode my dirt bike.
Love it.
I rode my dirt bike from Charleston, South Carolina to Charleston, Oregon on dirt roads.
Dang, that's amazing.
But that was different. But I think that
You're
was
a road
like
warrior.
that's a dirt ride,
That's
not a
incredible.
road ride. But we do a lot of trips. I went all the way up the east coast of Maine. I just got back from doing around Yellowstone.
Oh,
You know, so
beautiful.
those trips are, all those motorcycle guys. It's almost like you need one in like Sturgis, South Dakota, where they have the big Harley thing. You know,
I love motorcyclists because they get our brand.
they get it.
They get Stuckies. We're on, and also car enthusiasts.
Yes,
Right?
especially
Muscle
classic.
car drivers, classic car drivers, like the Stuckies that I would own, these 5 Stuckies, we'd have swap meets, we'd have motorcyclist gatherings, and so yes, I want us to be a meeting point for people
That's fantastic.
who love the road trip. And the cool thing I learned about motorcyclists, which you know, is that they love motels.
Oh yeah.
Because you can pull your bike up.
Pull up right in front and don't worry about
Yes.
somebody messing with your bike.
That's right.
Some guys
Yeah,
actually.
you love the motor courts and the motels that are just classic roadside Americana, but you also like them to be nice, right? And let's be real, a lot of them are really
Pretty
not
crappy.
that nice. So I have a book for you. There's a guy I've gotten to be friends with just virtually. His name's Andrew Beatty, and he and his wife travel Canada and the U.S. on motorcycles. And he's done one book. He's got a second book coming out about motels across America for motorcyclists or road trippers, and they're nice.
Sweet.
They're where you'd like actually want to spend the night.
My guys will actually put their bike in their hotel room.
You know, see that's why you stay in a motel.
That's why you
That's not a
stay in a
hotel. That's a motel.
Hotel, motel, Holiday Inn.
That's right. Well, my favorite. Now there's a great one in Georgia in Savannah.
Really?
The Thunderbird Inn.
Oh, I think I've seen that.
Oh my God, it's amazing. I stay there every time.
Is it cool?
It's amazing. Yeah, it's classic.
like 60s?
1960s, beautifully
Redone?
great neon sign out front, nice little gift shop, by the way. Shameless plug, they sell Stuckey's product, mainly because I'm a regular there. And I went to I was paying and I said, they had moon pies, and I love moon pies. And I said, well, Stuckey's go great with moon pies, so you should sell some Stuckey's too. And I talked to the manager, and I said, oh, well, I happen to own the company, so
We can
here's
make
some
that happen.
samples. Yeah, so now they carry our product, and they have a great Instagram.
So
feed.
you want people,
Yeah.
if somebody out there knows somebody that owns some retail operations, they can buy it. If they own a C-store, they can buy your product,
can.
right? Or if they know
Yeah.
somebody that's,
Absolutely.
that's awesome.
And we're a distributor, so if you're in the business, you would know Core-Mark, Vistar, UNFI, GSC, which is grocery, so we're in grocery as well. I mentioned
How about
McLean,
independent grocery store?
Independents as well. IGA is an independent. Piggly Wigglies are independently owned, franchised. So absolutely. So they can just get on our website. There is a spot on the website where you can
Place an order.
you email us and we'll, we have to get information like your EIN number, make sure you're a legit wholesale business. You can't just be like, hey, I want to buy your product wholesale because I sell stuff in my garage. Like, no, you got to be a legit wholesaler.
Right.
But yes, we will start the process, which is pretty painless. We can usually get an order placed like within a few days.
Bam.
Yeah. It's been a delight.
Anything I should ask you about that I haven't, that'll help you promote your brand?
No,
or anything?
well, it's about storytelling, and thank you for what you do. And thank you for that wine. That was good. I usually don't drink wine in interviews, but
Well, you usually don't do
it's
interviews
like
in somebody's living room
yeah,
either.
it's like. And by the way, just so you know, this is not like 7 a.m. What is it? It's like 6 o'clock at night.
It's
So
past that.
Yeah, so this is an evening taping. So
Right.
it's happy hour.
Well, Stephanie, thank you. Y'all, thank you for listening to another Beach Talk, and go online, share it with your friends, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.